welcome to the Wild Wild West podcast. My name is Richie Richey of the MHRT Network. Can you all hear me fine?
Great. Loud and clear, brother.
Over here to my right, and I'm obviously broadcasting live from being captive somewhere in a basement.
The North Pole.
In the North Pole. But over here to my right here is the real Alex Givens. You can catch him on the Lightning Fast Fantasy Podcast directly after this podcast airs with Monsieur Givens and Coach Defense for all of your fantasy football needs and requirements. You can also catch his written content on Arrowhead Addict. Down directly here below me is Monsieur Jack Kenna, respected member, Monsieur
Jack.
Of Raider Nation there, and giving us all of his feedback on his Las Vegas Raiders, invaluable in terms of information he brings. And down over here diagonally, we have Mr. Robert Garcia providing his content and insights on the powder blue and gold, which the Broncos and Chargers obviously played last week. So we'll probably just jump right into that to get that out the way.
Oh, yeah, we will.
So my score prediction actually was almost exactly correct, just in reverse.
Wrong colors.
Just wrong colors. I kind of did a little switcheroo and kind of made a mistake, which is really interesting. There's a few things in there in my defense, though, that you can't predict, and that's who's coming back, who's not coming back, and who's actually going to be out that I had originally actually thought was going to be playing in the game. And I'm not talking about early injuries either. Like that, you just have to kind of bake into the cake and just say, like, crap happens. Yeah. I actually did believe that Alex Palczewski was likely going to be back in the game for my Denver Broncos in the game against the Chargers. He was not. I also expected quite a bit more from Alex Forsyth at center, especially given the fact that he's a longtime teammate of Bo Nix. And he was trash, like straight up. The dude was freaking trash. Like, he's got to go. Like, he should have been cut yesterday. And you could actually tell in the Broncos offense where we had pressure right up the middle, almost for the majority of the game. The Chargers at this stage in their, they have a good defense, yes, for sure, but you're not necessarily known for your interior pressure on this particular team. You're known for your edge with, obviously Mac and Bosa being out for that game. So again, it was kind of surprising to see just that kind of porous interior for my Denver Broncos of kind of pushing up the middle, because that's not characteristic for your team in terms of playing that way. So credit where credit's due of exploiting just an absolute turnstile. I don't know how else to put it. Like
Olay.
Yeah, the Chargers were 11 for 18 on third down. That's ridiculous.
Oh yeah, you're no, just wait, Alex. I got a whole boatload of stats that are gonna blow you
obviously
away.
there was a whole lot of suck in that game for my Denver Broncos.
A whole lot of suck.
Yeah, a whole lot of suck. And what we actually saw was a unique game plan actually from the Chargers, and it's one that I hope that the Broncos pay attention to in terms of what the Chargers did to counter the Broncos defense. What they ended up doing, and again, I'm watching this with a very keen eye, so I don't expect everyone to catch it, but I'm not trying to toot my own horn and say no one caught it. But so here's kind of what I noticed. The Chargers didn't play their standard football. They didn't play the standard game plan that you guys are used to playing against most teams. You opted to go kind of horizontal rather than vertical. You actually did a lot of horizontal kind of shift and motion plays, which was a real effort to try to negate the blitz from the Broncos. And it was also an opportunity for you guys to make up for some of the injured linemen, to try to keep them constantly churning rather than actually needing to anchor and push and power and that sort of thing on the line. Alex obviously nodding is kind of saying, yeah, that would certainly help. as a former offensive lineman, if you're hurt or not feeling great, kind of keeping, like slow motion or motion in a direction, whether it be left or right, is certainly helpful if you're kind of nursing an injury in some way, just because you're not trying to anchor and put that, 300 pounds or 320 pounds, back on that back leg. That's a lot of beef. So, and then you also have to remember is that if you're trying to anchor that back leg, you're also taking probably a good 200 to 300 pounds of the defensive lineman onto that joint and that leg as well, because that's typically just kind of the way it works in the offensive line. And so I think the Chargers, kudos, like good on you. The offensive game plan and defensive game plan was pretty solid across the board, which kind of brings me to my last issue that I've seen for the majority of the season for my Denver Broncos, which is we're making great adjustments. We're just making those adjustments too late in the game. We just are. And you kind of saw that from the production we were getting at the very end of the game, where like we were down by too many points to really come back and win. But we certainly made a pretty good go at it. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
I bet Robert was dumping in his pants at one point in time.
I would be lying if I said that my heart wasn't beating out of my chest that last minute.
Like,
of the
what
game,
do we do?
Dude.
He was right there with Harbaugh, man.
Oh man, I know. Seriously, man. Oh my god.
I shouldn't laugh at that, but that was the low hanging fruit I had.
No, I mean it's it's. I was gonna get into it when as soon as I started talking, but no, yeah, I was. It was scary at the end of that game.
So just overall, I saw regression almost across the board from my Broncos offensive line. We didn't have key players play for us in the offensive line positions. We saw Pete coming in at right tackle, which I was less than impressed with, to say the least. You also kind of have a good idea of where the coaching staff is with our backup tackles at this point. And that is we brought back an old faithful who I'm quite certain I made comments about the fact that I didn't think we should have cut him this season, and that was Cam Fleming. I thought we should have kept him on the roster as that depth piece, as like a tackle 3 or 4, or at minimum try to keep him on the practice squad in some way, shape, or form. We brought him back. I think that means that Pete's probably going to be shown the door. I think we've probably seen enough in terms of what he brings to the table, and Fleming, I think, is just a better player than Pete is. And the good thing with Fleming is that he can play both left and right tackle. So, and he does so at a competent level. Like, I'm not saying he's a world beater, because that's not what I'm saying at all. But we have seen him step in at both left and right tackle and be more than just serviceable. He has actually put us in a position to win games when he stepped in when we've needed him. And obviously, we all know how I feel about Alex Palczewski at right tackle. The dude just needs to stay healthy. And I think that once he figures that part out, if he can kind of get his body right, I think Alex P could actually be a right tackle of the Broncos' future, because we saw a huge difference between A and B when McGlinchey went out. Like, the run game for the Broncos for those 2 games where Alex P was in was literally like night and day. Like, there was no difference. Like, it was so clear. And now we're kind of back in the dumpster, on fire, of course.
I was actually a little upset that McGlinchey left the game.
McGlinchey?
McGlinchey, sorry, yeah.
McGlinchey,
Well,
that
he
sounds
didn't
good.
play.
Oh, was he not playing yesterday? Or
I don't believe so.
Jesus Christ, Sunday?
I don't believe so. I think he was out. And I mean, this is the problem. So we had Andreas Pete play. I don't believe he did. And I don't believe Palczewski played either.
I'm guying the chair in this right now.
Yeah, go for it.
He just got designated for return from the IR a day.
Oh,
right.
Okay.
Right, and then Alex Palczewski was on the injured list, if I'm not mistaken, for that game as well. So we were on
that one. I'm going to take the butcher's word for it.
Yeah. So we were on offensive right tackle number 4 on the depth chart in Pete, and then we were on offensive center number 2, and who else was it? No, that was it. All the other guys were there, and then Bowles is banged up, but he was still playing. So the rule of thumb, as far as I'm concerned, is if you think you can get on the field, then you should be able to play. And I don't want to hear any nonsense.
Hey,
that's kind of my general
upside.
take on it.
Bowles, I don't think had a holding call in this game.
Yeah, he did. Don't worry.
Did he actually? I did not notice it.
Yeah, he did. Don't worry. He did.
It's not Bowles, it's Holes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Garrett Holds was back in full force, my man. Don't worry about it. He was back in full force. Yeah.
Did you even watch the game, Robert? Jeez.
I did watch it.
I'm kidding.
It's really unfortunate though, right? Like when you have a guy that's the real issue I have with the Broncos offensive line, aside from the fact that it's people keep hyping it up, and in certain instances they do play very well. So I have to give credit in some instances where credit's due. But the issue that I have is that the starters, like the actual starters that are on the offensive line that were meant to slated, they are not good. Like they're just not good. So you have Quinn Miners who keep out there thinking we're done. He's great. Like leave him there. Thank you. Don't touch him. Don't screw around with that. But you need that offensive center position. You need the guy to be the quarterback of that offensive line to make those adjustments and do the things and communicate with the quarterback and all of the stuff. And right now the Denver Broncos had a decent offensive center, but not great. And he went down. And Forsyth is trash, like absolute trash. Like should just be cut. They can go away. I will literally take any other lineman in at center instead of Forsyth. Like just any lineman. Just pick one.
Oh, brother.
Robert, you can trade him Leatherface.
I don't even know. I don't even know what we're doing with Leatherface or where
Leatherface.
And that actually could be an upgrade, Jack, and that's the sad truth.
That's pretty scary.
If Leatherwood is an upgrade, then man, it must be really bad.
Well, Robert, let's look at what you actually saw in the game in the middle section of the Denver offensive line. Quinn Miners was trying to overcompensate because he had trash to his left and trash to his right. So he had to try to actually overcompensate by blocking as many guys as he could to try to play cleanup crew. As a result, he ended up overextending himself on one play and he got nabbed with a holding call. But after that, he cleaned up his game and never had that happen again. And he was really the only solid offensive lineman for the Denver Broncos for the majority of that game. Once you got outside of him, right tackle did not do very well. He was getting just eaten alive by the Chargers D line. And then you ended up with the interior section of Powers and Forsyth that were turnstiles. Like they just couldn't block out of a wet paper bag. Like it was bad. And the reason and where you can actually see in the true stats of just how bad the Broncos offensive line was is we didn't succeed in pass pro or run blocking. Like this was not like an either or scenario where you're saying, oh, do you know what, man? But we got a great run blocking offensive line, so it's all good. Like we had 5 yards of carry or 4 yards of carry. We should have just maybe ran the ball more. No, that's not how it went down.
Couldn't run the ball
bad.
more.
They couldn't run the ball at all.
Line.
They couldn't run the ball at all, and they couldn't pass the ball to save their damn life. And in fact,
until the fourth quarter.
Until the fourth quarter, where we were throwing the ball over the yard, right? But that point there, like you got to come back by 3 scores, and you're really struggling at that point, right? So the short answer is the Broncos have much work to do. We are spending an awful lot on our offensive line for piss poor production. And at least the Raiders
that's why they're
are
hyped up because they got so much money thrown at
That's
them.
right. And at least like the Raiders, for example, have drafted young on the offensive line. And so if they're not performing, at least the Raiders can say, well, do you know what? We can always dip our feet again in the draft to bring in a few extra young guys to fill out the line if we still need some help here or there, and maybe even bring in a guy or two in the offseason to like really shore that up. The Broncos have all these massive contracts across the offensive line, and they're just not performing. And to make matters worse, they have it on the bookend sides, and the bookends are not performing. And so you're talking big money contracts on the two, the right and left tackle, who are both underperforming, which is just bad news.
Hopefully, then maybe you can get out of some of those contracts next season and draft some replacements.
Well, I think Garrett Bowles is basically is worth more money cut to my team than he is on the team next year, if I'm not mistaken.
He's
so
gone.
I'm pretty sure that's
You're counting down the days.
to steal a word, to steal a phrase from the Queen of Hearts off with his head. I think at that point, and I think that's probably the direction they're going to be going in that regard. But who was it? I think it was Robert. It may have been you and I last week that were kind of getting into it in terms of tackles, and might have even been you and Jack, you and I as well. Except I think that was on the show prior. Offensive tackles, there is a very a clear delineation in the NFL draft between typically where they're found and they succeed, and where they are then drafted and they often don't. Effectively, if I'm not mistaken, the general rule seems to be if they're taken within the top 12, like picks 1 through 12 in the first round of the NFL draft, they have a very high hit rate. In terms
I think I looked that up. It was like
success.
70%.
Yeah.
Wow.
And,
It's something ridiculous.
It's ridiculous.
It's in the show somewhere. Go clip it.
Yeah. It's actually quite remarkable, actually, in terms of like this is one of those things where a lot of people are like, I don't like stats. This is just kind of one of those that even John Gruden and Bill Belichick would be like, oh, you have to follow the stats. Like this is just straight, like this is simple math at this point. This is like 1 + 1 = 2 sort of thing. So
quarterbacks, tackles, definitely.
Yeah,
dude, like
quarterbacks and tackles.
Even Eric Fisher, who the Chiefs took first overall in 2013, ended up being pretty good. And I was like, oh my, what did we do? Like, who is that? From Central Michigan, like first overall pick.
That's crazy.
Look at us now.
Yeah, but that's
like I said, Jack, we paid our dues.
No, but that's the point, Alex. Like that is literally the point, right? Which is it's like
the only one that I can think is bad is the Rams took Jason Smith or something like that from Baylor, and he was just terrible.
Well, there's the New Orleans.
I think the Rams took both
the New Orleans guy.
Greg Robinson too.
Greg Robinson.
Yeah. There's the New Orleans guy
Trevor
too.
Penning. Yeah.
Penning.
Well, they didn't take him like that high though. They took him at like 12.
15.
I thought.
He was at 15, but he was still within that generally accepted zone.
I knew he was going to be bad. They moved him to right.
Yeah, he was in the generally accepted zone of where you'd expect a left tackle to succeed, and he couldn't.
His biggest thing was character issues, right?
Yeah,
reminds me of Robert Gallery when the Raiders took him second overall. Bust at the left tackle. They had to move him to left guard, and he was decent.
Yeah,
not great, just decent.
I saw a clip. I can't remember who it was now, talking about how Robert Gallery would piss his pants first play of the game, like right at the line of scrimmage. Yeah,
I thought that was what's his name? The guy who does all the NFL shows, Slarick. Actually, the old Bronco.
Mark Schlereth.
They both did it. I don't know.
Mark Schlereth was.
He's the one that brought it up. He said he would do that stuff. Yeah, that way he's like trying to get the guys not to touch him. That way it can block him easier.
I guess anything you can get.
Yeah,
Alex.
But so that was kind of where
myself.
No, so that was kind of where I was at after watching that Broncos Chargers game. I kind of saw it as kind of overall domination on both the defensive and offensive side of the ball. I think the Chargers had a very solid game plan going in, and the Broncos just simply adapted and adjusted too late. Alex, over to you. Your thoughts on the game, and then we'll kind of move on to Alex and Jack, and then we'll move on to the Chiefs game.
Well, Chiefs had a bye, so
good. We got to hear Robert.
Yeah,
so that was the team that played.
Yeah, wait. What? I don't get to talk about my team.
No, you already did. You said you looked around.
You don't get to talk about them.
Hell no.
Robert. We'll come back to you. I promise. I'm just kidding. The floor is yours, sir.
Yeah, I mean that game was kind of. I don't want to say it's exactly how I thought it was going to go, but it went how. The way it went, I wasn't exactly surprised by it. This is why I said I really wanted to have this. I preferred to have the Broncos after the bye week, and it showed entirely in this game. Had a lot of our guys back healthy. I did say if we had Slater and Alt back to start this game, we would win this game, and we sure did. Had a lot of outside running zone plays. I thought the clear change in play calling is very evident with the 2 tackles on the field versus off the field. Like you had mentioned, Rich, a lot of outside motion, a lot of outside zone running, a lot of end arounds with Darius Davis. I think, man, I counted like 3 or 4 from him, which is probably the most we've ever run in a single game. Usually that's kind of like a gadget, like one time it'll, catch a defense off guard. You maybe pick up like 10 or 15. And then you kind of shy away from it, but they were going back into that repeatedly. One thing I talked about too last show, going into it, a point of emphasis for the Chargers in this game was going to be the time of possession, because the Chargers were dead last in the league going into this game in time of possession. I don't think they're dead last anymore. I think this game bumped them up a little bit. They're either at 31st or 30th now. But yeah, I mean, the time of possession.
Congratulations.
Yeah, I know, right? We're
not almost 40 minutes. That's wild.
Yeah, 37 minutes to 22, and it was like 29-12 at one point in the game. Like that fourth quarter really like did the Broncos justice for just how much of a domination this game really was. I was a little bit nervous at the end of it, really nervous on that onside kick, because the first one didn't go 10 yards. I was like, all right, but then there's offsetting penalties. I'm like, figures, we can't even like end a game properly. And then the second one finally did just go straight out of bounds, and that was it. But I have a couple of some interesting stats that I really didn't like know going into this. The Chargers, they had the longest drive, I think, in this game versus the Broncos in like, I want to say it was in like, or I'm sorry. The Chargers defense allowed the longest drive to the Broncos that they have had since like 2000 or something like that. And that was a drive in the fourth quarter. So that's kind of like something that.
Damn, how long was that?
Yeah, it was like, I think it was like a 97-yard drive or something like that.
14 minutes.
Yeah.
Wait,
yeah.
No.
Dang, 14 minutes.
Yeah,
That 14-minute, 4-minute drive.
Yeah. Yeah, no. Yeah, the Broncos had the drive. No, the Chargers had this. Sorry, this is talking about the time of possession. The Chargers had, it was like a, where was it? They had it was like a 9-minute, 20-play drive that resulted in a field goal. And so that was the longest scoring drive, like time taken off the clock, that the Chargers have had in the drive since like 2000. Sorry to get confused with the stats. Yeah.
That's all right. That's pretty impressive.
Yeah.
Down and then doing that.
20 plays, 10-minute, 29-second drive.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. So it was.
Good God.
Yeah. That's the 11 for 18 on third down that you're talking about right there, and that's what is allowing us to keep these extended drives. I mean, Herbert was fantastic this game. He had his highest passing yards total in all year, which was only like 237, so it wasn't like a whole lot. But I mean, it was still a career high, or a season high.
Career high. Whoa.
Yeah, career high. No, yeah, season high. And I think I also have another stat too. The Chargers had, for divisional purpose.
Right, Kev?
Yeah, I know.
Well, that makes me wonder about something else, because you look at the Broncos' third down; they were 3 of 11.
Yeah,
it's tough.
And I want to say,
I'm just wondering, did all those third downs come on that drive?
Yeah. I was going to say, I think 2 of those third downs, or it might have been all 3 of those third downs they got, were in the fourth quarter. Bo Nix had like 22 passing yards at halftime or something. Like it was rough for them up until that fourth quarter.
How many third downs did the Chargers convert in the 10-minute drive?
Dude, I want to say, I think it was like 4 or 5. I want to say, yeah. Crazy enough, 10-minute drive to not even end it with a touchdown. Like, you end it with a field goal, which, whatever. Hey. I'll take it. We scored on our first 4 possessions, 2 touchdowns and 2 field goals. So we really just set the tone, kind of like early on. Bo Nix throws a pick on the first throw of the game for him. So it had a very, I actually wrote this down too, had a very eerily similar start to the Chiefs and Chargers game, where the Chargers get a couple of early turnovers, go up by 2 scores early, and then there was kind of like a little bit of like, I thought, are we going to go into a little bit of a lull here? But then we have that huge drive We go into halftime with like I said, 20-0 lead, and then it was just they kind of took their foot off the gas. We had a lot of guys out in our secondary this game, and that lack of experience really started to show in that back half of the game. Some of the coverages and schemes that Minter was putting out there early on did not really work as well. Bo Nix and Sean Payton definitely made some good adjustments in the fourth quarter. And Bo Nix, man, I think we only had like 2 sacks on the day. We easily could have had like 5 or 6. And Bo Nix
there's only 2.
Yeah, Bo Nix just willed himself out of some of these sacks.
61 yards rushing.
Yeah, but he led the Broncos. I think.
No, the Chargers had 3 sacks. Denver had 2 sacks.
Bo Vic, dude.
No, I think Denver had sacked Herbert 3 times, and we sacked him twice.
Oh, man, I got it written down wrong.
That's what you want for your quarterback, right? You want your quarterback to be the leading rusher on your team.
Broncos got Bomar Jackson, dude. I didn't know you guys got Bomar Jackson. That's sick.
Yeah.
Bo Vic.
Yeah.
I'd rather have Bo Jackson.
You got Bo Tebow? That's tight.
Yeah.
Oh, there we go. Full circle moment.
So that was a very annoying part of this game. Bo Nix just really keeping some of those drives alive for the Broncos. And this is where I'm going to go back to it just very quickly. This is where I say that these games for Bo Nix matter, and this experience that he's getting right now in these games matters. There is no way in hell you can tell me that he would be gaining more off the sideline watching whoever it would have been, Wilson or Stidham, than what he's doing right now in game competing against actual NFL defense and actual NFL talent. I thought, honestly, all things considered, he had a great second half. Like, Bo Nix played very well.
There.
Yes, the potential is 100% there. They just need to put some more pieces around him for that O-line.
I kind of, after watching that, like the fourth quarter, it kind of like reminded me of like Josh Allen's rookie year. Like you saw flashes, he ran the ball 20 times a game, but you saw he had a cannon and like might figure it out, and then look at him now. So I mean,
he's a one-man wrecking crew with the Bills right now.
He goes up and down. Next year he'll be the exact opposite. Like last year, Allen throwing so many picks. It was like, who did this guy turn into? And now he's looking great. Wide receiver.
But Josh Allen's jump from rookie year to second year was like
massive.
Leaps and bounds.
It was big.
And I mean,
he went from.
I'd be willing to bet it's from the experience he got in year one.
Yeah, I mean, he was a borderline bust.
My big issue with Bo Nix and starting and doing what he's doing right now is I don't believe that he is learning enough fast enough to make a big enough difference for the Broncos this year. So
I think that's okay.
No. And under normal circumstances, I would agree. The problem, and this is what I've said all along. In fact, I'm pretty sure I even said this to start the season. The problem that I have is that Sean Payton is too good of a coach to not do well. Like generally speaking. So here's an example. He's got a 3-3 record right now, and he's got like a 4th string right tackle and like a crappy offensive center.
I think that's
things. Go ahead.
I think that's the whole point for Robert. It's like, again, he's too good of a coach. You got to play him right there.
No, but that's actually where I'm kind of pulling the reins back in, which is it's not Bo Nix that's like, for example, progressing to win the games per se. It's the coach scheming to get the team across the finish line in certain games. Now, that's okay. However, the problem is as we saw in the Chargers game, and Robert, this is kind of what you were kind of getting at earlier and what you were saying. I alluded to it, but I may as well just come out and say it bluntly. You can't go down by 23 points and expect to win a game.
No.
That's just stupid.
Well, let me ask you this, guys. Since I didn't watch the game, but, Denver did convert 2 4th downs. Was it on the passing or was it on the running on those 4th downs?
But it was also like to sort of kind of like agree with what Rich is saying here in this regard. They were like you said, you're down 20. I think it was 23-0 at one point.
Giving
them
like
you're basically
deep.
sitting back in you know, soft coverage, you know, giving them the 10-yard.
Zach Wilson would have found a way to mess that up. I'm sure.
I mean, look, this game, I know it was a domination at halftime, and I know the final score makes it look closer, but there was like a lot of key plays in this game that very easily could have switched like the momentum and given the Broncos all the momentum. And it just, one thing I'll say, and this is kind of going into my next point, there was a penalty that the Broncos had. There was a holding call on defense when the Broncos were down 10 with 5 minutes to go. And the Broncos forced a fumble, and they recovered it, but there was defensive holding, so it negated, and that was that. And I think the Chargers went on to take off some more time off the clock or whatever it was and then punt it anyway. But, I mean, if that penalty doesn't happen, that's a stolen possession probably around midfield or so. You're probably going to get great field position. You go down, score. You still have timeouts, I believe, at that point, because that was the drive that Peyton ended up using his timeouts on, which was a little weird too. I didn't understand the calling of the timeouts so early, but you know, whatever. It didn't really end up mattering. But another big thing going into this game, the Chargers with penalties had been oh man.
Sadly, that might be true.
Yeah, you know what? It very well could be true. No, but I was saying the Chargers only had 3 penalties on the day compared to the Broncos 7, which is ecstatic considering we were like on 6+ penalties a game coming into it. So I'm glad to see that adjustment being made from the coaching staff. Love to see that. And yeah, Gabe came out of here with a dub. This was the hardest 5-week stretch of our schedule, where these first 5 games you had a division opponent in, you know, we faced each one of you guys. Faced all 3 of our division opponents this early on. And now, honestly, like the Chargers are sitting at 3-2. We're in a wild card spot currently. We're in the 6th seed. Obviously second in the division. I really think they have a chance to take off on a legitimate run here for these next like 5 or so games. You have the Cardinals coming up on Monday night. You know, who knows if Marvin Harrison Jr. is still going to play. He's still in concussion protocol. I mean, Kyler's been all right, but I've never really been scared of him. The only thing that I'm scared of now going into that game is seeing how available our defensive line is, seeing how many sacks Bo Nix was able to get out of. I mean, Kyler Murray is he's many things, but if there's one thing he's good at, it's maneuvering in the pocket and avoiding sacks.
Little toddler with the phone, dude.
Yeah. So,
and, you know, Robert, the only thing you got to be scared about is that if you lose, it's like, damn, we should not have lost that game. Just like the Raiders and Panthers, it's like, you should feel like you should dominate, and if you lose it, then you got to come on this show and go, damn, we got our asses kicked by the Cardinals.
Seriously.
That's like about it.
That's kind of like where I'm at right now. Like these first 5 games were kind of like, okay, like I just hope we come out above 500, obviously. Like that's pretty much the hope anytime you have all 3 of your division opponents. And you know, the Steelers, obviously the Panthers were a freebie, but you know, all 3 of your division opponents and the Steelers in the first 5 weeks, like that's genuinely what you're hoping for. And I mean, now, yeah, like I said, we got Cardinals Monday night, then we have the Saints after that, Browns after that, Titans after that, and then the Bengals week 11. So it's like the Bengals week 11 is our next tough matchup, and they're 2-4 right now. Like their defense is atrocious. Dude. Yeah, I mean, like on paper right now, looking ahead, that is the toughest matchup by far. They have the best quarterback. Like it's not even close these next 5 games. So, I mean, by the time we do face off against them week 11, we could definitely be 7-2 if we rack off these next 4. Like the reason I say this is because when we do get to the back half of our schedule, those last like 7 weeks or so is when some of the more tougher opponents are faced. Like I said, we face the Bengals week 11, then it's the Ravens. Obviously take on the Chiefs again, Broncos. We take on the Bucks later on as well. There are a few freebies, quote unquote, in there. I think the Patriots are scattered in there. I think the Falcons, they're not a freebie either, but like I said, another tough team. Like the Falcons are they're not world beaters, but they are definitely a solid team with a solid defense that could definitely give the Chargers fits. So I say that we could be 7-2 in hopes that we win the games that we're supposed to, get your record to a good enough spot. So when you do start to face some of those tougher teams and you do eventually start to take those losses, you're not suffering so greatly because you won the games you were supposed to early on in the season. The Chargers have always been storybooks of, you start the season, they laugh, but we had a lot of Raiders fans coming into this season saying that they were going to be second in the division, and look how that's turning out for them. So I'm just saying, like, the outlook on this season. Hey,
you're allowed to fire shots back, man.
Listen,
shots fired at you.
I heard
you can fire shots.
In America, we have stand your ground, brother.
I heard a lot of talk before this season, and we're 2-1 against the division with a nice last place record ahead of us, and we're really going to see it in these next 4 weeks. So I really like where the Chargers are at. Very excited for this team moving forward. And yeah, the defense, man. Number 1 in the league in points allowed per game. That's not going to last, but it's pretty damn great to have after 6 weeks, if I do say so myself.
Well, absolutely.
It depends what kind of cushion you guys build in these next 4 games with some opponents that are perhaps not great in terms of offensively. So, for example, if you can lock down some of these lesser opponents because you're going against in the last place schedule, right? So that's, I think, an important thing to note. Is that if you can lock them down to lower scores, you could potentially give yourself some buffer with that particular stat and record, and perhaps still be, in the top of that particular statistical category. I think where you're going to end up in a tough spot is you've shown that you have some injuries on your team, and then the question is, can those injuries, now that those guys have returned, can they stay on the field for you? Right. Yeah. And I think that's a fair comment. But we really want to get the Raiders take on their game. So we can
and before that, I just got to say, one guy in your squad, Richie, that played well is your number 22, Jones. 11 tackles, 1 assist. He kind of stood out. Just the eyeball test on that. So,
yeah.
Yep. So he has been a stud for us this year at the inside backer position. A guy that was a special teams only guy for many years. And, every once in a while you get that special teams guy that comes up through the ranks as the UDFA, et cetera, et cetera. You keep them on your roster, and then every so often those guys end up having the game just kind of like all align for them all at once. And, Wesley Woodyard, for example, would be another guy that I would argue is kind of in that same camp where he was a special teams guy, and then he was a starter and got a second contract from the Broncos when he was with us. So curious as to your take on the Raiders game, though, Jack.
Yeah, I just want to start off, I want to salute, I see a bunch of all the Raiders in the chat. So we got Carlos, Kev, Sharif, and then the one you can repost. If you want to repost it, I think that was pretty cool. I want to go visit this guy. Raiders Speedy, Uncensored, X-Rated Live Happy Hour. I'm coming to visit you, bro, and I want to see a Raider game with you.
Oh, yeah, you'll definitely be
I want to go to Hawaii. Shoot. I'm going to see a Raider game with anybody. I want to go see it with you, bro. So this game, always comes back, bringing it back to the Steelers, Raiders. Raiders got spanked. It was 13-32. But, out of all, we're all division rivals. But as a kid, not watching tons of games or anything like that, it always came back to the Steelers and Raiders for me. So, now you look at it, 5 years of AFC championship games going against each other, 22 Hall of Famers between the two squads. So this was like my first true rival, growing up when I was a little kid. It was great to watch and so forth. And, it was close at halftime. It was 12-7, Steelers. And the Raiders played like the Raiders have played the whole season. can't stop the run. You can't run the ball. You turn the ball over, and you give up penalties at the most inopportune times. And it's been a storyline for the Raiders this whole season. So it was a difficult game, to kind of watch. And the score that I predicted was horrible. I wasn't even close. The last year's, I think it was 34-17, and this year it was again 13-32. So two.
Yeah. Didn't score in the second, third quarter.
Oh,
rough.
It was bad. I mean, I will say that I'm still happy with the rookie offensive lineman that we've put in there versus, Cody Whitehair, putting JPJ in his spot. And then also, DJ Glaze, which I didn't have a lot of hope for going in there versus, our other right tackle. And I'm just happy that that's happened. But yeah, it's like the rushing yards. I mean, Pitt, 183 yards, Raiders, 57. You're not going to win games doing that. Everything that they're doing, you're doing things, you're going to lose games, not win games. And just, again, another game of turnovers. I mean, look at TJ Watt. I mean, we did pretty decent against him, blocking. But did you guys see? I don't know if you guys saw it, but he actually was doing punches. And he punched out, a ball. It's like, man, even when he's not getting to the quarterback.
Fumbles.
Yeah.
No sacks, but 2 forced fumbles.
And they're punches. I mean, he was literally punching the ball. I wish he would have missed and, punched one of the players and, got a penalty, versus being dead on accurate. And, it did hurt the Raiders in the way you don't have, of course, Devontae. That we'll talk about that too, guys. But you don't have Jacoby Myers, who's your number 2. And Michael Mayers is still out for whatever his unrelated football situation is right now. So they were down some of their offensive weapons. And again, the offensive line's not that great. You know what? 4 tackles, 2 tackles for loss, and the 2 forced fumbles. Max got in there. Max does what Max does. 2 tackles, 1 for a loss, and half a sack. Nate Hobbs played really well. And I was really happy, to see Diablo come back in there. He was been on IR first game back. He looked fresh. I mean, he looked really fresh. Got 6 tackles, 1 sack. But it's just the same game I'm watching over and over. I mean, Robert, I saw this game against the Chargers. Richie, I saw this game against the Broncos. I'm watching the exact same game unfold every single week. And I'm getting pretty tired of Getsby's, play calling as a whole. And I think the nation's getting pretty fed up with the 2. Things just don't change. And they're not going to win games until things start changing on this team. Otherwise, it feels like I'm just going to watch a loop over and over again.
So question for you here. With I don't know how else to put this.
Mm-hmm.
With your head coach saying and doing some pretty dumb stuff on social media and in press conferences, it's clear that players, because we've heard from players that are now turned analysts, they basically said, you just don't say that kind of crap out loud. Like, you got to stop that. Like you got to like immediately.
I said that a couple weeks ago.
And so, but what I'm getting at here is,
what do you say?
At some point, AP has to take accountability for not stepping in as the head coach and saying Getsby or whatever the heck his name is. Either way, he's got to get gone. But it's besides the point. Is Gonsby? Yeah, that's even better.
Gonsby.
The dude,
love it.
The dude's
Gonsby. That's why I knew. I want to use that on all the other Raider shows.
Yeah, like he's got to go, but AP needs to show that he's an actual head coach of the team. And so this is what my concern is. If AP doesn't step in and doesn't veto certain stupid play calls or force a change, cool. But then he also then needs to fall on the sword for not actually, taking the reins and saying no.
Well, that's the problem, is that AP is not an offensive-minded coach. And the struggles are really mainly with the offense. I trust Patrick Graham. I really do. But, with the offense, you can't ask a defensive player to come in there and start saying, hey, I'm a linebacker in the NFL. Now I'm the head coach, and now I'm going to start calling plays on offense. That ain't going to happen.
Actually, I disagree. And this is why.
You think AP can call drop plays and call them?
I think he can, and this is why. They often say that the other side of the ball, because they're assessing offensive players in the film room, especially for the entirety of their career, that their best analysis of other players isn't actually the offensive side of the ball if they're an offensive player, or the defensive side of the ball if they're a defensive player. A lot of the times, what you see from these guys is their best assessments and evaluations are actually on the other side of the ball, because they spent just for what's the equivalent of months effectively in the film room analyzing that side of the ball throughout their career. Like Elway assessing defenses, for example, he did very well as the GM, generally speaking, with the defensive side of the ball. The Denver Broncos offense is
factory,
right? And yes, AP won at Kingsbury, and that's fine. But the thing is that AP is still the head coach, and so AP right now should be behind closed doors, pounding the table, saying Getsy's got to be demoted, and he can join Hackett at the unemployment line soon. And we got to get someone
ironically from the same tree.
From the same tree, yeah. And you
coincidence? I think not.
Yeah. And you got to bring in someone on your team. You have a couple guys on your team who could probably drop a few decent plays, and you slowly work those new offensive plays into your playbook and replace the ones that don't work. And then by the end of the season, you'll have a reasonable understanding on whether or not your offensive talent is what you thought it is, and or whom you need to replace. The problem is right now, when you are not playing at the level, when you're playing at the level you are right now today, you really don't truly know where the holes are, because you do not feel that you have competent play calling to put guys in the right positions to see if they'll actually fit or not.
But this is where, Rich, when we were talking about it before the season started, about the Raiders in particular, we were saying about the coaching staff and Pierce going to be this, it's going to be different. Pierce is going to be the official. We said this when he got hired full time. There's going to be a lot of questions. There's going to be a lot of questions that we have about him, and they're going to have to get answered. We're either going to leave with all the answers, or we're going to be leaving with more questions. And I think now we can say we have more questions than we do answers about AP, about all that, Marvin Lewis and all these guys he brought to be around him. At the end of the day, you are, like you said, the head coach. You got to have the final say. And if he isn't having that, if he doesn't have that authority in the locker room, that's a big issue, especially for a team like the Raiders, who are a cornerstone franchise in the league and have been for decades, although recently it's, hasn't been great. But I mean, like the Steelers, like the Packers, like some of these other teams that are cornerstone franchises in the league, the Raiders are one of them. And if this is the level of coaching they have with that talented of defense, and I get it, the quarterback, and the offense in general, but I mean, that's a big issue. And this is the guy you gave a 2-year contract to in the offseason to essentially be already that, you don't want him to develop into that. You already believed he developed into that last season when he took over as head coach. And now you're kind of in this, and this is kind of the question I wanted to pose to you, Jack. Do you think that trading Devontae is the Raiders kind of officially saying I don't want to say giving up on the year, but
no,
we're, okay. So you think they're still trying to win?
I think they're still trying to win. I don't think there's ever a give up. And you know what? Let's put it this way. And to answer Sharice's question, I think he wanted your head coach, Robert, if I'm correct, in trying to answer that one. But no, when you're AP and you got a 2-year contract, and again, going to what Sharice said with Kingsbury, the reason why the Raiders didn't get him, and I said this on the last show, he wanted a 3-year contract. The GM, Telesco, and AP got 2-year contracts. So they didn't want to give your offensive coordinator a longer contract than your head coach or GM. So that's that right there. That kind of settles it. Yeah. So we got stuck with Getsby. We thought Getsby would be better. Hey, like with the Bears, he got a lot of rushing yards. But coming from the Steelers game against his old quarterback, I mean, you look at the numbers that he posted. He didn't really do a lot of damage with his arm. He did it with his legs. He got like 2 touchdowns. I think it was like 11 for 59 or something like that in the way of rushing. So again, it's coming from his legs. So when you do that and add it on to what your running backs are going to do, yeah, you're going to look like you're a pretty good rusher. And AP, from the get-go said he wants to establish the run. He wants to be a running team first, go back to the old Raiders and go that route. So no, I don't think there's any quit in the team. It's just because of what it's transpired. I think it's a little disappointing for everybody. And I think it's disappointing for him too. And yes, he needs to stop thinking like a player and making business decisions and, posting that and just keep it in the locker room and keep it between, him and the players and general management on the Raiders squad.
He needs to stop and step back and say, if I was a player and my coach said, and say it to himself out loud, what would I say back to him in the locker room behind closed doors? Would I be okay with it or not okay with it? And I think that is a reasonable lens by which to look at things in terms of how you're acting and reacting. And I also think that he needs to have the same lens before he clicks the like button on a post on social media, because whether he likes it or not, he's a head coach in the NFL, and he's got to be careful with that little trigger finger of his when he's, surfing Twitter and Instagram when he's taking a crap, right?
Just like make a burner. Use a burner account.
Yeah, like you got to do something.
Take the Kevin Durant approach.
Dude, Carlos is like, if I'm not going to be on a show for a night, I think Carlos needs to come on because everything that he brought up are points that I want to talk about. So good job, Carlos.
With Brady.
Carlos.
Well, that's just part of it. Yeah, I do want to talk about that. There's only so much I want to talk about. It's like, what was that movie 50 First Dates? You're seeing it over and over and over, and it's all the same thing. Too many turnovers, not enough rushing yards, giving up too many rushing yards, bad penalties. So it's been a storyline for the Raiders this season. And you know what? We're going to be playing, the Lambs, coming up here, and then I'll talk about certain players and so forth. We're playing the Lambs. I don't know if Cooper Kupp's going to be playing that one. Right now, the line is like 5.5 points going to the Lambs, even though it's going to be in SoFi, which, again, the Raiders have not played well, even though they've been like all home games. So Robert, I don't think you're charges for any of that. So.
Just more fans to be disappointed when they watch their team lose in our stadium. It's all good to me.
Right. Well, hopefully that changed, and hopefully we get you on game 16. So in a bright spot, let's talk about probably the brightest spot, besides, Max, is Brock Bowers for a second. I mean, Bowers, he has just been, right? I mean, he's dominating. I'm like, he right now after these games got 36 receptions in 6 games, and the only one who's gotten more receptions as a tight end with Keith Jackson, Richie of your Broncos, in history. So I mean, I got to say I'm pretty impressed. He's only tight end with 2 games with 8+ catches in back-to-back games as a rookie so far. And, with Devontae not being there, and Jacoby, he should be coming back this week to play. But now he's the feature guy. So, Richie, if you can find a way to get him on your fantasy team, I would definitely – they're going to be going to him a ton.
Oh, he's gone.
You're going to see 10, 12 targets, per game.
Yeah, he's already on everybody's –
No touchdowns, though. Not a lot of touchdowns.
No, he should have one.
Well, not a lot.
No. Well, the Raiders aren't scoring many touchdowns.
At some point, you have to think that'll change, though. Like at some point, he'll start to.
Yeah, he's like 12th in the league in receiving yards. That's pretty ridiculous.
Yeah, that's pretty crazy for a tight end.
at some point he'll figure out the yards after the catch part as well as just catching the balls for a bunch of yards, right? Like at some point he's going to be like, oh, so when I catch the ball, I kind of do this, this, and this, and I can get like 5 or 10 extra yards after I catch the thing. I mean, let's be real.
Oh, he does. He's a yak guy.
He did that. He's
a pure yak guy.
He is, but he's got to get past that first and second contact and shake them off. So, for example, like what you see from Travis Kelce a lot when he's kind of dropped off a little bit this year, obviously, but what you saw when he was like in that prime stretch there is he would catch the ball, he would have contact made, he would run through the contact and then break off for another chunk set of yards to regain that extra, piece. And then eventually, as he got better and better and better, he went in for the touchdown on those. Yeah, well, he went in for the touchdown on those, right? Like that's what I'm saying is like Bowers is going to get there. I think
he's gonna get there. I mean,
you can see that trajectory.
It's kind of already there.
I wonder what the over under is on him breaking the all-time record for receptions, yards. I'm kind of curious. That would be an interesting bet.
For a rookie,
I never looked it up, but
for a rookie.
For a rookie, yeah.
Right, for a rookie, yeah.
You have to remember is the tight end position is very similar to the quarterback, which is it is one of the hardest positions to.
Damn, the Yoko. That's terrible.
That's funny, but that's funny. But I think what you're going to see from Bowers here is he'll just get better and better and better. And I think that you're going to eventually see all those things. But the tight end is one of the hardest positions outside of quarterback and left tackle. Left tackle is another one that's incredibly difficult, generally speaking, to come into the league in your rookie year. And so that's why it's incredibly rare to see guys like Bowers do what he's doing right now and do it consistently. You often see this happen where they have a flash game as a rookie. It's like, oh, the guy is the guy. Okay. And then they suck again, in the next like 3 or 4 games. Bowers is one of those rare dudes that's just remained consistent.
Very consistent.
All the way through.
That's what Devontae Adams called him, was the businessman. So that's what he just called him, businessman. It's like he's never doesn't smile. He's just like he just goes there to grind and work.
Dude, he doesn't look like he'd even be athletic, but somehow he is.
Well, yeah. What was the guy that Renfro?
Yeah,
Renfro didn't look athletic or anything like that.
He's like Bowers is like a Captain America serum version of Renfro. Like,
that's such a good way to phrase that. But this is why you guys need a QB.
No, right?
And this is why I asked about, are you guys quote unquote tanking? Because I feel like after trading Devontae, you've kind of accepted the fact that, I mean, you're not winning the division. I think that can be stated. You're not winning the division.
I could say for 3 out of the 4 people in this panel right now are not going to win the division. So
yeah, I know. Let me put it this way. I don't think you guys are making the playoffs. I don't think you guys are making the playoffs with that offense. The defense is playoff caliber, but that offense is, I mean, so far away from being a functional offense that, I mean, realistically, what are you playing for this year? If like every
whatever win we can get.
I know, but
just take it one game at a time.
Playing for pride.
We're only at game 6, right? Yeah, we got 11 more games to play. Yeah. You just never know.
It's a young season.
You just never know.
True, I suppose. I don't know. I just feel like the Raiders are in like purgatory right now. Like every win.
It kind of feels that way. It feels that way. But a week can change everything. An injury can change everything. So let's just say, like right now, if Patrick Mahomes went down.
Don't you say that, Jack? Don't you put that evil on me.
Should put that evil on me.
No jinxing or anything like that. But I'm just saying that would just change the whole storyline.
I would stop doing the show. I'm like, I have nothing to talk about.
But here's the thing, Jack. Even if Mahomes went down, the Raiders, I'm sorry, but the Raiders are not winning the division. Like they're just not. The offense is. There's no run game. The quarterback play is bottom 5 in the league. The O-line is questionable. Like literally everything besides tight end for the Raiders is questionable. And then the defense is just like amazing. So it's like and the reason why I say this is how long is that defense going to remain great? because that window you have of it, the window you have.
There you go, Sharif.
Being good is not getting any larger. So
hey, let's keep that. There we go. Let's keep that one up for a bit.
Oh yeah, let's go back to
the previous one.
I don't want.
But you know what? Again, things can change. Like you lost your offensive tackles. You're losing Bosa. I mean, you beat the Broncos, but again, you got an easier schedule coming up, so I can see the confidence. But again, things can change. Again, something can click. We just got to find out week by week. And I still think our offensive weapons, even without Devontae, are decent. Again, we got to get our quarterback going and get him straight and do better than what the quarterbacks have been doing for the Raiders so far this year. But it was only his first game. And your first game, you're coming out, you're going against the Steelers.
That is true.
Jack, I have a question for you.
No Devontae.
How many linemen have you brought in to help fix your offensive line with Telesco as your GM?
2. Second round and third round, and they're both starting now.
No. That was.
Oh, you mean overall, like in camp?
That was in the draft. I'm saying you are now in season. We are coming into week 7 coming up here, right? Like we got week 7 to talk about. We've got week 6 in the books. The Las Vegas Raiders, by everyone's admission, I have not seen a single Raiders fan in the chat that disagrees with this as a general statement, which is JPJ looks great, but y'all want to see him at center. I agree. That's where I thought I wanted to see him too, and we all agree that that's what we should be doing, and that's
next
where
year
he's probably going to shine, and that's cool. And you got Cole, you got your left tackle who is generally good but not playing well this year, at least as well as he has been. Fair enough, but you got 1, 2, and 3 dudes that you got to fill out on your offensive line. So the job of a general manager in season is to recognize holes and issues on the roster, recognize when you want to either rebuild or not rebuild, or certain position groups that you want to rebuild with. I would argue, and I think that you would agree with me, that the offensive line is certainly one of those. So why is it that you guys have not brought in or had tryouts for offensive linemen and had them get replaced?
That is a good question.
Cycle guys in.
But I will give Tom Telesco this. He doubled his trades in the last 11 years.
Well, that's a freaking low bar.
Had to.
Right?
That's a low bar. Good for you. That's a soft bar.
I know. I had to say something. It's kind of funny.
That's like saying that
go
Big
sign
Poppy
Bakhtiari right now.
That's like saying like Big Poppy set up at the plate and had a T-ball on a little tee for himself and then hit it out of the park. It's like, no crap, man. Like, come on.
You're not wrong.
But in the way of like the pass, it's like their pass blocking is good. The run blocking is not good.
I think it's
and I think it has to do a lot with the scheme. There you go.
It's OC. I mean,
it's a scheme. And
like
so
I said, the only good running he had in Chicago was due to the athleticism of Justin Fields, not because of a running scheme or the running backs.
So you saw where I was going with that. That's good.
Yeah. So if that's,
I don't think the offensive line is bad. And again, in pass blocking, run blocking's bad, but they also don't have the running backs really there to help out either. Which again, I've said on different shows, I think it was a mistake to let JJ go, because if you look at that contract with Green Bay, it's really a 1-year deal for $12 million.
It's also pretty affordable overall, generally speaking.
And that's what he was making last year, and not to even give him an offer. I mean. That was a mistake on Tom. That's for sure. There's no doubt about that. And, one last thing before I get into other, like the trades and stuff, which I kind of feel like the Rams are a mirror image of the Raiders. I was kind of looking up some of their stats. The Raiders offense is 22 overall. The Rams is 24. The Raiders defense is 17. The Rams is 14. The passing on the Raiders is 13 overall. So there is passing. Not getting any points out of it, but their passing is 13. Rams is 19. The run is the 30th for the Raiders and the 29th for the Ram. So it's like it's going to be the battle of two teams that don't do the things that they need to do well to try to win this game. So it's going to be interesting to see, which team actually does better on any of those points. It's almost like, again, this whole season, the Raiders been doing the same thing. Now it looks like they're playing themselves for this game.
Spider-Man meme, dude.
Yeah.
Right?
No, you take the ball. You take the ball.
No, we just turn it over. We'll just
But that just a full circle, and then let's move on to those trades because it gets a big deal. I mean, you got two pretty big pieces of news to kind of cover off for your Raiders today.
absolutely.
The one thing here with that is, we were talking about earlier about Gonsby and the fact that he is obviously not doing a great job.
By the Wild West show.
Trademark, yeah. That's TM.
Legal notice. Just put it out.
Yeah. So you guys have Gonsby, who's not doing very well at all, and he's actually basically showing that he is exactly as advertised.
Wait. I'd say that again. I had a motorcycle go by. I couldn't hear what you said, Richie. I apologize.
Okay, well, you should have thrown a stick at it. But with regards to, I almost timed that perfectly, Robert. You have Gonsby.
That would have been bad.
You have a Gonsby on your team who is basically showing that he's exactly as advertised, right? We knew that he showed out a certain way in Chicago, and he's now come in to the Raiders and show that he ought be gone, hence the name change. And you really should be moving on. This really kind of goes back down to AP versus Telesco. Who is actually making those decisions within the organization? Does AP truly have kind of the authority to make those changes? Or has he been kind of neutered in some regard with regards to what he can do with the coaching staff? Because I think that's kind of an important piece, right? Which is, we want to point, you actually want accountability on your team. Like everyone should want accountability on their team. Like everybody, it doesn't matter who you are. If your offense isn't doing well, you want to know who's calling the plays and you want to know who's game planning. The Broncos, for example, their offense is coming out and it's not looking great. As a Broncos fan, just to kind of tie this back to what I know and kind of then apply it over to you guys, is I want to know why our offense looks so poor when we are eventually making adjustments and then seeing some fairly good results in the fourth and the end of the third quarter and beginning of the fourth quarter. And the Broncos have seen that as a pretty steady pattern throughout the entirety of this season. So my point back to you is you've already seen Getsby. Your run game was generally good in years past. You've not made that many player changes.
Just one. Just one of the best running backs in the NFL. That's it.
No, but the point is that while a great running back will continue to extend those run plays and also slide and get himself through perhaps smaller lanes and really get good vision and maybe get a few extra yards after the catch in that regard. By and large, it's your offensive line and the scheme that would ultimately get your run game going, and it's clear that that's not working. So why not just fire Getsby or get Gonsby on the sideline, have him hold a clipboard for whomever's calling plays and go from there?
Well, again, it's like, who are you going to replace? You're in the middle of the season. Then you got to start all over again.
Anybody.
I mean, yeah, I don't know.
What's happening right now with your current offense because it's bad.
Dude, your run game is not.
The run game is actually pathetic. Bad, and what was sad is that it actually got better with Madison, stepping in. Than with Zeus.
He was good, by the way, against the Broncos. So I agree. And
it's not like they don't try. I mean, Madison ran 14 times. I mean,
he scored the only touchdown against us. So
I know.
I mean, by all accounts, he should be your starter. But this is like the similar case with like Staley last year. You bring in a coach that is specialized in a certain aspect, and you are not only are you not good in that aspect that he brings in, you're bottom of the barrel awful at it. Like it's, I mean, this is literally the same thing with Staley. Staley was brought in as a defensive mastermind, and it wasn't our defense was just average. It was god awful, bottom 3 in the league.
It was ass. Okay.
Yeah, it was hot ass. So like, if it makes no sense that Getsby is still on this team, especially after the Jets fired Saleh already. Like the Jets kind of like ripped the Band-Aid off. They were the first team to be like, all right, we're firing a coach.
That was Aaron Rodgers, dude.
And well, I know, yeah.
Well, I think it's also, I think Saleh wanted, he wanted to start calling plays, and the offensive coordinator is Rodgers' guy. So
Well, no, the offensive coordinator is Rodgers. It's
Yeah,
not
that's what I
Rodgers'
mean.
guy.
It's like that's
basically
where then they had that
stand-up,
conversation.
ass. He said, "We're
It's
gonna
like
do this."
Devontae Adams, hamstring, which I'll segue into that. All
Deep
of a
outs.
sudden he gets traded. The
Lazard.
hamstring is good.
Yeah.
We're
Yeah.
ready to go.
Yeah, that hamstring's been good for about
It's
3
like
weeks.
that. It's like Willy Wonka, coming out all wobbling and gets to New York perfectly.
I would love to see behind the scenes of really what transpired, between AP business decisions, then AP doing, but we said dumb things and liking the trade, and then Devontae acting like what on his show. Going to what? I haven't talked to him.
Probably went in and was like, "Do you like this?" I did. Yeah, my hamstring hurts. Trade me.
You're like, do you want to be a Raider for life? Yeah, of course I do. Man,
Yeah,
my hamstrings
and
really hurting.
Devontae was the biggest guy in bringing Getsby or Gonsby, in. He has back 100% because he was the wide receiver coach in Green Bay.
Yeah.
He said he taught him a lot of stuff, and it's like, the plays that you're going to be running are the plays that I know that they're going to help me with my stats and so forth. So, and then to see him turn around and and he never wanted, Aiden, or he wanted Aiden O'Connell. He didn't want Minshew. He follows Aiden O'Connell, on Instagram, but not Minshew. And then Booger Man, puts his nose and then he's gone.
Booger.
That's such a petty
It's just funny that's something we look into in this day and age. It'll be like so and so scrub their Instagram of any ties with the team. Do they want out? It's like what?
And then next week it's back up. So it's just about the money.
Question for you about those moves, so we can kind of progress on to the week ahead. Obviously, 2 big moves. You hinted at it already. Yep. Obviously, Devontae Adams gone, and then let's also jump right into your take on immediately.
Well, I got 2 things. Yep. So let's go talk about Devontae. So Devontae, Raiders traded Devontae to the Jets. They got a conditional 3rd-round pick, and they don't take any of the money. The Jets are taking all the money, which is really the biggest part of that trade. And getting that 3rd round, which could be a 2nd round, which I don't see it happening. Yeah, one of two different things need to happen. Either Devontae's 1st team All-Pro, 2nd team All-Pro, or they make the AFC Championship game. Yeah, he's got to be on the active roster, or the Super Bowl on the active roster, which I see it staying as a 3rd-round pick.
Yeah. But even then, as a 3rd-round pick, it's not bad. And you
got rid of all the money.
Yeah, that's the big thing. You don't pay any of the money.
That's the big thing you want.
I was actually talking with friends saying that Telesco made an actual good trade for once.
Yeah, his 2nd trade, right?
He doubled. Said he won the trade. Where is that at?
There is an article out there that talked about the Raiders won that trade because of not taking any of the money. Now,
that was the biggest thing about it.
And if you look at it, that's going to add another, I think, $28 million next year to their $80 million. So they're at $108 million next year. So again, if the Raiders do bad, easier to get a quarterback next year. And then you got $108 million.
Sprinkle some shiny toys around them.
O-line pieces. Get a run game going.
I bet it's Shador, dude. Him and Brady are close. You kidding me? Come on. The writing's on the wall. Deion's going to come back, play corner. Shiloh. It's going to be a family affair.
Well, maybe you can come back and play wide receiver. I don't know. We can use another one of those now that Devontae is gone. So that was the first big move. And, it's okay. I'm fine with it. Actually, it's like, what? I'll take that 3rd-round pick because let's say they do mediocre. I'm going to recall it. I called it 9-8, for the season, 10-7 before the season started. Now it's probably 6 to 7 maybe wins, and maybe use that 3rd-round draft pick to help you get that quarterback. So it could be a win-win on that aspect, regardless. And the other part is now Tom Brady and Richard Seymour are part owners of the Raiders.
Yep.
So Tom Brady owns 5% of the Raiders at a cost of $300 million, but he's a limited partner. So what his role is going to be, probably try to sell tickets, And he's also going to have some say in. He's going to start studying those quarterbacks now. So he's going to have input on who the Raiders actually get next year at quarterback.
Should do
who better than one of the greatest to ever do it?
Jim Brady.
So there's some
Doesn't
interesting.
he own 10%? Isn't that like he has another partner with him?
No.
Okay.
No. So what came out of the owners' meeting that happened yesterday was Mark Davis wanted to sell to Tom Brady to really entrench him into the building to try to sweeten the deal. He wanted to sell him 10% at a discount.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah.
The owners said, not going to happen, my man. We're not going to allow you to discount an NFL franchise just because you want Tom Brady to be there. And
well, there was also talk too, like, him actually being an owner and a player, have him come back, but they're not going to allow that. They said, nope, if you're an owner, you can't play for the team. That's gone. Now all his, his big contract with CBS, I mean, there's a lot of different restrictions. And I think the Raiders were also maybe hoping to get him to call all the Raider games versus, also having that contract with CBS.
Yeah, so there's some interesting stipulations. I don't know if anyone has seen them all. I read through them before the show. It was quite interesting. There's about 4 or 5 of them that are quite interesting. He's not allowed to critique the officiating is one of them. He's not allowed into any other team's
locker room
or back office facility.
Can't do like any pregame.
He can't do any pregame conferences with the networks because that would allow him to then kind of get on the bat phone and get back to the Raiders organization to kind of make some game plan and changes. He's also not allowed to critique other players aggressively or in any real way. So that's why his commentary is so generally bland, is that he's almost been practicing knowing that these are restrictions that he's going to have to live within. And so he's trying to get a feel for whether or not that makes sense for him to continue or not.
I wonder if CBS is going to say, hey, you know what, we need to change your contract up because of what you just did.
What you did, yeah.
Well, it's a contract, and the sad fact is that if they don't want him to do the thing and he's still doing the thing, they're going to have to pay him. And if I'm Tom Brady, I'm saying, show me the money. Let's work on a settlement, and then maybe I'll consider, because I'm sure he'll find a suitor that will be willing to work within those restrictions and pay him quite a bit of money.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. Yeah, I'm not a big Tom Brady fan in the way of what he does on the mic, but it would be interesting to see him actually call a Raiders game. That'd be kind of cool.
So he can actually critique the Raiders freely, because that wasn't one of the stipulations.
I can see it.
Right?
Calls the game. I'm fired. This guy's done after this game. Damn, Tom. No. I told him this a million times.
We got to make some calls. That Jones dude from the Patriots has got to go. Hey, Mark. Sorry, I'm on air. But it'll be really interesting to kind of see how this all plays out. This is obviously a fairly historic thing to happen for the NFL, because it's kind of one of the first big player / ownership pieces and stuff.
I think it's like almost the first ever. I mean,
I think it is actually. I think it is. But what made the Tom Brady one so interesting is that the original piece was they wanted Tom Brady to play for the Raiders, and they wanted him to play at quarterback, and they wanted him to do so for equity in the team. So and then the NFL said no dice. And
but how does that work then? Like, if we think about it, if we go back to this year's draft and Caleb Williams, that's what he was asking for.
Right. Well, the thing is, he's a rookie quarterback, and he doesn't really have proven leverage.
It's like you have equity in a team, and you're like, let's say the Bears gave it to him. I mean,
well,
how does that work? What's the difference between Tom Brady and Caleb Williams if you are playing for equity in a team?
Well, I don't think you can. That's
the whole point. Yeah,
I think that's kind of the whole point about it. That's why they denied Caleb. But I mean, if the Bears were to have done that, you're basically committing yourself to this quarterback regardless of what forever. Like there is no you can't even
then if
think
you don't,
about
he's a disgruntled guy that owns part of your team. You know?
Go sit at the back of the bus.
Then,
keep your mouth shut.
Can you imagine having to play him on Sunday? Like, hey guys, look, there's the owner of our team right there.
Well,
throwing for 300 against us.
And what if he sucked ass?
That's
there's the owner of our team. The backup starting over him.
Yeah, that's the point. You're like the owner of your team is a backup on another franchise like that. You know, I feel like there's a reason why the NFL, like a good reason why the NFL blocked off. Brady.
He's also subject to the NFL gambling policy.
Oh, so he can't. Okay,
so he's subject to the NFL gambling policy. Sorry, that was the other one that I forgot to mention there.
Oh, I forgot all about that one too, Richie.
All of these are very fair
standard
given circumstances and whatnot. I think that all
you want to be an owner, there comes some rules with that.
Yeah, I think that's totally fair. I have no problem with any of that kind of stuff, to be quite honest. And if he can work his CBS contract and still make that money, then so be it.
Here's the real question. Does AP get fired and we see Belichick come into town?
Oh, I read an article on that too. Well, we're going to have to find out at the end of the season.
That is a firm maybe.
That is a to be determined situation. And do I want Belichick?
I don't know that Belichick wants to be Tom Brady's employee either.
How the
that's a totally different dynamic. He's his boss.
Total different dynamics. That's kind of funny, actually. But after, the Raiders going, they said the Patriot way and, with McShitnuts and bringing all those Patriot players over there. And it's like, dude, God, we hated it as Raider fans.
Carlos.
There's only a few players that we kind of liked. And, the Patriot way is not without Tom Brady actually playing, there ain't no Patriot way. It's really the Tom Brady way.
Yeah. Well, I think that was. He literally went to Tampa Bay and won a Super Bowl. So
right.
I mean, look what happened in New England after that. So, I mean,
he didn't last
that long. Play out.
No, he didn't. So moving on to next week, so we can kind of cover off all of our teams and get Alex on his way for his lightning fast fantasy podcast. So Alex, coming off a bye, you may have a few guys coming back. At least some guys are likely going to be back healthier at the very least. What do you see coming out for your Chiefs in their upcoming game for Week 7?
Yeah, so two good things about the matchup with the 49ers, the Super Bowl rematch, if you will. One, they are coming off a bye. So, they got an extra week of time to kind of create that chemistry and mesh with the, having the receivers that had to kind of take a step up in Mahomes. And second is, this is a pretty banged up San Francisco team, with the players that aren't there. And they're kind of uncharacteristically a little more weak on defense than they have been in years past. So I still think, given how the season's gone, it's going to be a good close game because that's just, barring some sort of offensive epiphany this game, I think it still ends up kind of being a similar, 3-6 point type game that'll, be pretty close and come down to, who makes the last mistake. Which, as it's gone so far this year, the Chiefs defense has, either stepped up and made the stop or forced a mistake to kind of, close the book on the game. I think one interesting component will be, as far as I know, the 49ers passing attack's completely healthy. They're also, Ricky Pearsall is fully practicing back from, getting shot in training camp. So, that'll be an interesting component to see if they kind of approach the game from a different angle than they did in the Super Bowl and kind of attack the middle of the field, because there was there was a point in that Super Bowl where Kittle was kind of eating Bolton up, in the middle of the field, and for whatever reason they went away from that. But that's kind of the one thing I guess I would be nervous about going into the game. Just that they have a fully healthy, fully loaded aerial attack on the offensive side of the ball, and we're still kind of trying to figure things out on that side, and haven't been as consistently explosive as I thought they would be. Granted, some of that comes with, losing Pacheco, losing Rice, losing Hollywood Brown. But the X factor to me is Xavier Worthy, and I think he's made improvements every game, and kind of uncharacteristically for a rookie in Andy Reid's offense, had to be more involved than I think he wants him to. But yeah, I mean, I think it like I said, I think it's going to be a close game. Big factor, like I said, is how that passing attack with the addition of Pearsall comes into play, as well as what's going on with Jordan Mason. I think he was a limited participant today in practice. But I think that's if you're down to your third running back and Shanahan is everything goes through the running game with him. Like that's certainly a big component. But yeah, I think my final prediction with it, like I said, I think it's going to be pretty close. I'd say like 24-21, something like that.
That's
but the Chiefs have like good teams, elite teams find ways to win games, and not every win up to this point has been a pretty one, but as long as it's continuing down the W column to the playoffs, you can't really be upset about that. Yeah, there we go. I like the shirt, Jack.
That's where I had to go. I had to get it just for you, Alex.
It is not an Arrowhead, DZ.
So I kind of agree with you. I think it's going to be a close game. I think Shanahan, while he is a great coach, he really is. I think that the problem is that you can't, even as a great coach, you can only do so well when you have uncharacteristic injuries on your team that have you.
Their list is like a CVS receipt of the.
Yeah,
people.
Like it's an uncharacteristically long injury report, which is going to put them behind the 8 ball. And that being said, though, with his kind of game plan of that kind of like grind run game kind of approach, he could bring up a practice squad guy that might surprise you guys and could pop off a few runs.
They got that Garendo guy who looked pretty solid. And he's kind of I know going into the draft, I compared him to Pacheco. Because he's like got that 4.2, 4.3 speed. So yeah. I mean, he's
got the frame,
a dark
right?
horse to it.
Yeah,
for sure. I will say the one thing is with Shanahan is, I feel like he has a pretty good resume of losing games in the second half from going off of stuff.
You're being nice about it.
Yeah, but that's definitely a component with it as well. But
yeah.
Like I
said, it always seems like Shanahan, with the big games, he always has issues. He just doesn't seem to pull those ones out.
He has the biggest issue in NFL history, right? Against, I guess your owner now. But the 28-3 or whatever the hell it was, I don't even remember. In Atlanta,
the Falcons game.
Although he wasn't the head coach, but
he was the offensive coordinator, though.
Yeah,
he was.
He had his hand in the cookie jar. That's
he had more than his hand.
But yeah, and then like you said, Chiefs wise, they're pretty healthy right now. The only person that didn't practice today was Mike Dana. I think he's the only true question mark for the game. So, that is I guess healthy as you can be with I've already mentioned the people that are out for the year or on IR. But and then there's still rumblings too that they're going to maybe make a move for a receiver. Some of the quote unquote insiders have said that they expect the Chiefs to make a move before the deadline, and it'll be for someone under 30. But I don't know who that is. I know I mentioned I wish it was Amari Cooper or Deontay Johnson, and Amari in the arms race in the AFC East went right after Devontae, I guess. So the options are getting a little more limited, but Yeah, I think we still see him make a move. I've seen rumblings of MVS coming back due to him being cut in Buffalo. And as I said on Coach and Kurt's show last night, I'll be right back. I'm going to go drink some bleach if that happens. but I think that could be a very likely scenario because Andy Reid, values the knowledge and experience in his offense. I think that's been proven by the moves they've made in response to injuries so far, and getting Juju and making sure that some of these guys that they potentially could move on from, they bring back on 1-year deals. And I think it's from the mindset of they have experience and exposure to what they want to do, so it's not as big of or steep of a learning curve as bringing in someone that had no time with them. But
you know what, Alex, who I kind of see? I kind of almost see like a Jerry Jeudy going to your team.
Yeah,
Cleveland's looking to blow it up.
I don't know, but they just signed him to a fat extension, so I don't. Yeah,
they can't move him. That's why they moved. That's why they moved Cooper, because that was the only guy they could move.
I think really the only big name options would be Deontay Johnson, Christian Kirk, I think, in Jacksonville, or DeAndre Hopkins. But Tennessee's already said they're not trying to move him. That could be smoke and mirrors. It could not.
As much as I hate to admit it, I think Mike Will is also somebody you guys might potentially target because he might be out in New York.
I don't know. He doesn't run the right routes, according to some people. So, and if you just look at him wrong, he goes on the IR. So, no, but that could be one too, depending on. I mean, I think the Jets have to make a corresponding move because there's too many people in that wide receiver room, to not have.
Yeah, you're not getting rid of Lazard. You're obviously not getting rid of Adams, and you're definitely not getting rid of Wilson. So Mike Williams is definitely the odd man out.
And he lost the game for him, according to
Rodgers. According to Rodgers, he lost the game for them. Yeah. So
first, Saleh got him to that point. Mike Williams lost that one for him. Pretty soon he's going to be running out of people to pay him back. The owner, he's racist.
Well, he's going to blame Devontae next, probably, right?
Yeah. Devontae
after seeing that at house,
what happened. He went to Vegas and forgot everything.
So, Robert, we'll jump into the Chargers, and I'll kind of go down the list with my Denver Broncos because we play tomorrow. So
that's right. You're the Thursday.
It's
the Peyton game.
A short week. It's Peyton versus his former team in New Orleans. So I want to kind of close the show out with that because I think that's got some implications to it, to say the least.
Yeah, absolutely. We're the Monday night game this week, so we have 2 primetime games for our division this week. You start us off, and I'm finishing us off for this week 7.
Pause.
Got the Cardinals. Yeah, pause. Cardinals coming in. We're going to Arizona to take on the Cardinals. They're coming off a 13-34 loss to Green Bay. Obviously, we're coming off the 23-16 win over Denver. This is going to be kind of a wild card game, I will say. I feel like this is the first game of the season I can't properly read, just because there's so many variables that could happen that can affect the way this game goes. The Cardinals run the ball at 7th best in the league at 145 yards a game. Chargers run defense is 6th in the league at just under 100 yards a game. I think they're at 97 per game rushing allowed. So that's going to be the story of this game for us. Can the run defense hold up and not allow the Cardinals to have those extended drives? If you really were looking at them against the Packers this week, their offense was moving the ball very well. They just couldn't hang on to the ball very well. I think they had 3 fumbles, I want to say. That obviously, if we can get some kind of turnover output like that, it's going to be a pretty relatively easy game. It's just going to be the Chargers playing their game more or less of the same, running this ball, getting J.K. Dobbins going. We did see Herbert come out last game against the Broncos and throw the ball a ton. I think he threw it, 37 times?
Yeah, I think that was
sorry, 34. 34 times. So still threw it 34 times, the most he's thrown it all season. So I'm very curious to see how the game plan offensively will be going forward. I'd assume we want to run the ball, but I didn't think we were going to do what we did against the Broncos and just go kind of very pass heavy with it. So we'll see kind of what happens with that. I do project us winning this game, though. This one, it might not be as easy. But I think last time we played the Cardinals, it took us like the last second walk-off touchdown to beat them. So I have this game, have us winning 26-17. I think it'll be a 2-score game in the very least possible 9-point victory. I expect it to be close, but not close enough to where I think I'll be scared that we can somehow lose it or blow it. I think the defense will play up to its strength and up to this team, especially if Marvin Harrison Jr. doesn't play. If he's out, I think this game will be a lot easier, not having to worry about him. But yeah, 27-16 is, or I'm sorry, yes, 27-16 is what I have this game being. And yeah.
Yeah, I see this as a 23. I see this as a 23. I actually I think the Cardinals might beat you, and I think the reason for that is you're coming off a divisional opponent. You got a bunch of guys that came back from injury against a divisional opponent so that they could play against the divisional opponent. I think that's something worthwhile mentioning. And the other thing to remember is that Arizona, like the team themselves, they are built differently than the AFC West teams. They're just not put together and built the same way that we are in the AFC West, which I believe is an important distinction to make, which is they typically have those kind of like nose tackles that we typically don't have in our defenses. It's not that we don't, it's just that we typically don't. And they're generally just physically larger on their defensive line, which could really potentially, I'm not saying it will, but potentially aggravate some injuries with your offensive linemen, just simply because you had at least two, like both your tackles for sure. And if some of those larger linemen kind of catch Herbert off guard or kind of have him fall the wrong way and that kind of stuff, we saw even in the Broncos game, Herbert have a couple limp offs and stuff like that where he was obviously visibly hurt. He played well, don't get me wrong, but at some point, that injury, if he really and truly aggravates it, may well put him behind the 8 ball. So my gut reaction is I see this as like a 23-17 game for the Cardinals. And I think it's going to come down to Cardinals running the ball against the Chargers, and that will slow down that pass rush and start to grind down your defense. And I think that will also skew time of possession, which is another big stat for a team beating another.
Yeah, I definitely think the injury is something that the injuries to this team is something that is to have a little bit of pause about. I will say though, with Arizona, their defense is pretty atrocious.
Bad.
They're 27th in points allowed.
Can't stop anyone.
Yeah, so they really can't do much to stop, and if the Chargers are just able to use their run game and use their time of possession like they did against the Broncos. I actually checked right now. The Chargers moved up from 32nd in time of possession to 25th after this game against the Broncos. So I keep forgetting we're so early on that these kind of shifts in games can have a giant effect. Totality of the league. So I think it'll definitely come down to that. Obviously, if Marvin Harrison Jr. is playing and Murray's on his A game and he's evading these sacks like Nix was doing against us, and our pass rush is not able to contain him, it'll be a long day for us. And I don't think the Chargers are built to necessarily win shootouts because that defense is built to not hold them, to not let them get into a shootout territory because this offense is nowhere near ready to compete in shootouts. So it's got to be, I mean, all these games for the Chargers have got to be low scoring. And it's
Dobbins.
Like you said, Rich, it's going to come to Dobbins, and it's going to come down to can we stop James Conner?
And Robert, I like your score prediction. I mean, I had it 27-16. You had it 26-16. So
26-17. Flip the last digit. So I mean, well, it really, like I said, this was the toughest game for me to predict because there's just so many different things about the Cardinals. They have a lot of their highs can be very high and their lows are bottom barrel low. So it's really just dependent on what Arizona, like what version of Arizona are we going to get? Are we going to get the Kyler Murray who is evading tackles, evading sacks, running at 7-8 yards a clip per scramble and dotting people up, or are we going to get the shivering Murray where our pass rush is able to contain him, those rushes aren't going anywhere, and that offense essentially just gets stymied?
If only it was next week when Call of Duty comes out. You would have been.
I know, damn it! Why couldn't we play the Cardinals after the Call of Duty came out? Oh man. But yeah. So, yeah. 20,
just mark your calendars. This is the last pre-Call of Duty Kyler Murray game we're going to see. So we'll objectively get to measure if that's true.
So what he's saying is, and we'll hear it in the lightning fast, sell all your Cardinals players. Yeah. All right, Jack, your Raiders.
Yeah. Okay. So I got. Oh, actually, I want to cycle back a little bit. I already mentioned, that the Rams and the Raiders are pretty much the same, and it's going to be a team who the will, the want, not doing the penalties, and just really wants it more. And again, it's going to be a game of turnovers. It's going to be a really close, low-scoring game. I got the Raiders winning 19-16. I see both teams only scoring one touchdown.
Wow,
that's it. But I did want to. I forgot something I wanted to mention earlier when I was talking about the salary cap. Having $108 million, and I looked up who's available next year as a free agent. Because you got $108 million, and you need to replace Devontae Adams. And there is one guy that jumps off the page that just makes everything feel good, and that is T. Higgins. So I'm going to call it now. Raiders are going to get T. Higgins next year because you're going to pay that type of money that you're going to pay Devontae. You can slide that over to a much younger guy for a team that needs a lot more help, and you're not having to give up any draft picks for him.
I mean, that is. I mean, I think ultimately it'll come down to what does T want to do? Does he want to get paid or does he want to win?
Oh, he wants to get paid.
Yeah, if he want, which I agree with you. Yeah, I think he wants to get paid. Otherwise,
that's why he only took 1 year. What, 22 mil?
Get your quarterback, Jack. All of this sounds so nice, and it sounds like it would work out so well. But you got to have quarterback.
You got to have the QB.
All of this is for naught.
Just say it with me, Jack. Shador.
we will get through it.
Shador.
Yeah.
No, I don't really want Shador. That's actually the one quarterback I don't want.
Cam Ward.
There you go. I like Ward.
Or you take Beck and reunite him with Bowers. That'd be bad, but.
Oh yeah, no, I wouldn't mind that either. There's like a few of them out there. So
manifest.
And you got to figure not all those teams next year are going to need quarterbacks.
Yeah. So just to confirm, you have a very close score in that game.
Very close.
You're talking, a possession.
It can flip flop.
Like a possession sort of thing. Okay. So I'm actually agreeing with you, and I think that I agree with you in principle, but I think you're wrong.
Okay.
And how am I wrong? I have the Raiders.
And how am I right?
This game. Well, you're right that you're very close in so many statistical categories, but I believe that the Raiders have a bit of a chip on their shoulder. I think that the team themselves, with the Devontae Adams trade, don't like the news that is being said about them in the media. So I think that this is a bit of a chip on shoulder game, if you will. So I see this as the Raiders kind of coming back out and saying, how dare you think that we are tanking and or not good enough? So I see this as actually a game where it's not going to be super high scoring because I just don't think the Raiders have that type of offense. But I do think that your defense is kind of low key way better than they have been and are getting credit for. And I think that there's some potential against the Rams where you guys could have a few takeaways that kind of shorten the field, open up a few things in your playbook, etc. That's kind of where I'm going with it. And so I see this as something probably along the lines of like a 23-14 kind of game where it kind of gets a little bit away from the Rams because of your defense. Not necessarily because I think your offense is going to light the world on fire. when I think your defense is going to say, stop crapping on us. We're better than this.
Well, I hope you're right, Richie. I really, really do. I like your prediction better than mine. And I also say it's going to be a big question. I've been looking at it all day in the way of Cooper Kupp. He practiced on Monday, but there's been no word if he's going to play or not, which he can make a difference in this game. I'm looking at it as he's not playing right now. This is the way I'm looking at it.
Yeah. So, Alex, what are your thoughts?
Oh, I kind of agree with both of you in that. I think my prediction, thinking about it coming into the show, was, that they're both evenly matched. Kind of like Jack said, they're playing mirror images of each other. And I see it, being a low scoring game. Who comes down to, how many mistakes does Stafford make? And can the Raiders, stop Kyren Williams? But really, I think those are the two deciding factors. And if they can stop Kyren Williams, I think that makes it comes down to the last possession game. If they can stop Kyren Williams and force one turnover, I think the Raiders have a good chance to win. Flip side of that, if the Raiders turn the ball over, I think the Rams have a good chance to win. So,
you're right. And it's like the Raiders have turned the ball over more than any other team in the NFL. 9 turnovers.
Yeah.
And that was, we said going into this season, that was the one thing the Raiders couldn't do, was consistently turn the ball over to win games, and it's what they're doing.
Yeah.
So, Robert, close us out for the Raiders game prediction here. Your thoughts?
For the Raiders game, I'm very much in agreement with what Jack says. I think this game very much will lean on if Cooper Kupp is playing or not. I think Matthew Stafford is capable of winning this game with Cooper Kupp and just Cooper Kupp. But if he doesn't go, that makes it a lot easier on this Raiders defense to kind of pin their ears back and like you said, just kind of solely focus on stopping Kyren. And if you're able to get the Rams out of their run game, then you just send Max and your other rushers at Stafford and just send that pressure consistently. Release the hounds, exactly. So I think like kind of like you all said, agreeing with all of you, it'll come down to a one possession, one turnover, one major play in this game. But I think I'll take the Rams in this one, just because I think I did see a tweet somewhere earlier or something. Might have dreamt about it. I don't know. But it said something about that Cooper Kupp was trending towards playing on Sunday.
I think he is expected to play.
He is expected to play.
Yeah. At least as far as fantasy is approaching it.
Oh yeah, fantasy. Yeah, that's like the best place to get your news for injuries is fantasy.
Right.
Yeah. So if he's playing, then yeah, I definitely have the Rams winning this one. Like I said, very close one. I think it's going to be like 20 to 17, 23-20, like 3-point difference. No matter what the score is, I think a late field goal wins this one.
Let's see.
And my take, actually, Robert, is slightly reverse to that if Cooper Kupp does play, because I think if Cooper Kupp does play, he's rushing back from an injury. And I think Kupp has had enough of these
limited
multi-game. I think he's had these multi-game kind of issues. So if he does play, I think that the Raiders have a good enough defense that they could probably, I'm not saying they're going to do it intentionally, but I think they can knock him out of the game with a few good hits and kind of some, pile-ons and that kind of stuff that ends up happening, because Kupp has certainly got some injury history to him recently. He's getting up there in age. He's a very gifted player, so don't get me wrong. Like, he is a very gifted player, and he is definitely a difference maker. But I think, like I said earlier, I think the Raiders defense is way better than a lot of people are giving them credit for. And I think what's happening is that their offense is allowing the games to kind of get out of hand for their defense, and then their defense just getting straight up gassed because they can't stay on they can't be on the field for that long of a period of time and hold up. Like, you just can't do it. And so I think that that's kind of where I'm going with it. And I also think that when you have Cooper Kupp coming back, you're going to start game planning with him in the game, and then all of a sudden the wheels fall off when the dude gets knocked out. So my prediction is that even if he does play, I think he gets knocked out of the game, and then I think that actually then hurts them even more so than it would if he just wasn't playing, in my opinion, just for what it's worth. And I'm willing to go even further in my prediction here. I believe for a Raiders win, and kind of go and not fence sit, DZ. You see that? Not sitting on the fence. And
I happily sat on the fence.
Yeah. So Alex is shimmy shaking because the fence post didn't feel great. But I think that's but anyways, that's kind of where I'm at with that Raiders game in terms of what I think is going on. I think we moved on to the Broncos game, though, just to make sure we can get Alex off to his show coming up in a few minutes. This is a big time Thursday night reunion game. This is going to be hyped up. This is going to have all the things. You have the storyline of teacher versus pupil, both now head coach with Dennis Allen and Sean Payton. Obviously, Allen was under Payton
Raiders
when he was
coach.
in New Orleans. He's also the Raiders head coach as well. So again, some interesting things kind of took place there. Dennis Allen has started off pretty hot in terms of the 2-0 start, and then has now lost 4 straight, which is a huge storyline. A team at this point, after losing 4 straight, is either going to rally together and realize that they are better than that, or this is just the beginning of the end. Right, like this is this game against the Broncos, because of all of the storylines through it. This is either what the team is going to rally around to kind of prop up their coach and say, we got you, or they're going to nosedive and it's going to be bad news bears. It'll be very interesting to kind of see if they decide or can turn around, but they also have a ton of injuries. So do my Denver Broncos. So, that's not shots against the bow to kind of say, haha, you're injured and I'm not. That's just a fact. The Saints have a good number of injuries. They've lost key players, as have the Broncos. The other interesting piece, Jack, is news out of Denver is that Estime is likely going to be playing on Thursday.
Nice.
Which will be a welcomed 1-2 kind of thunder punch, if you will, for my Denver Broncos. Because Estime and Williams, who's actually done better lately than he did in the early stages of the season, to his credit, because I obviously didn't think that he should have made the team because I didn't like the way he was playing in preseason or anything. But to his credit, he has certainly bounced back, and credit where credit's due is kind of my general approach to these things. But I think Estime is going to be the guy that's going to be a bit of a difference maker. I think he is fit to absorb contact. I think he's got some explosive pass catching ability in his game as well. And there is some trending that appears that Alex Paslowski, the right tackle that I was talking about earlier in the show, is likely going to be playing in this game. It's kind of like a more likely than not scenario. And so I think that if he does play and does get slot in at right tackle, I think that's a good thing. And I also believe that you're going to see Pete either get cut and or not get called up or get shot down to the practice squad. But either way, I think you're going to see Cam Fleming likely be the next guy up to kind of slot over there at the right tackle position.
Richie, question for you. Is Carr playing this game or not?
No.
Okay. Ooh.
It's Rattler time.
Yep. It's Rattler versus Nick.
Rattler's going to get rattled.
Rattle me this.
Yeah, so this is Rattler versus Knicks. Knicks has generally been a little bit more of a stable player, etc. throughout the entire
Noah Olave too.
And Noah Olave.
Yeah, no Shaheed either. He's
no
out.
Shaheed, yeah.
Yep.
So you gotta like I said, you have a
it's
number
be a
of
smoking.
injuries there. Yeah, so you have a number of injuries there. And then you also have some offensive linemen for the Saints that are out as well, which is again just going to be
a Denver Broncos defense fantasy play of the week.
Absolutely.
I would say that would be a good play. Yeah, I think that would be
yes.
Now, in fairness, though, you also have Pat Surtain is not going to be playing.
Yeah, I think, right?
Yeah,
I'd almost rest him even if he was healthy.
Yeah, with Olave,
like give the young guy a chance. The next man up.
Yeah.
Oh, damn, DZ's got him in our league.
But he's coming off an L though. I don't remember who that was to, but
like you were saying, Rich. like you were saying, Rich, I really hope this is I for once I really hope that your Broncos win this game because I need that will of the Saints to be absolutely destroyed and obliterated before we face them. Yeah, we need them to be just because we face them in like 2 weeks, so we just want to face a reeling like corpse of a team after the Broncos are done dismantling them.
And then
we'll kind of just cruise on through against them.
Yeah, so I kind of see this game has the potential of getting out of hand.
Absolutely.
It really does.
Oh, yeah.
It has the potential of getting out of hand. That being said, I'm just not willing to go all the way there. I have so many issues with my Denver Broncos offensive line. Yeah. I have so many issues with the success of this Denver Broncos offense. The defense is not what I'm necessarily concerned about. Robert, as you can attest to, sure, you scored 20 points in the first half. Congratulations. You scored 3 points in the entirety of the third. Of the second half. The second half. You scored 3 points in the entirety of the second half after scoring 20 unanswered points, I might add, in the first half. And so my defense isn't necessarily what I'm truly concerned about here. It's my offense not being able to play complementary football to the defense on the Denver Broncos. At some point, I would love to see Bo Nix get out of his own way and start to be able to actually read the field properly. Because that's really what his issue is, if I'm going to be perfectly honest. His issue is he's not reading the field and he's not identifying where the pressures are coming from and making the right protection moves and choices. So it's kind of a bit of a twofer with regards to Nix. You can go back and see it with the Raiders actually more predominantly and more pronounced, Jack. When Bo Nix was flushed out of the pocket, the Broncos protection, including the extra wide receiver, was actually over to the left-hand side of the line, and Max was actually running from the right-hand side of the line. Bo Nix would have seen Max on the right-hand side and should have known to not scramble to the right. And instead, when he had the ball in his hand, he panicked, and then he scrambled to the right, only to look up and see Max Crosby literally barreling down untouched right towards him. Now,
not a smart move.
No, that's just dumb. Now, he was able to escape it, and to Robert's point, I have to give Bo Nix credit where credit's due. He's got some escapability to him, so like good on you, buddy. But you're also not going to make plays when you're hopping on one foot trying to avoid a D end or an outside linebacker to try and throw a ball downfield. So that's kind of point one. The other thing that I'm seeing a lot of Bo Nix, and what he needs to someone needs to smack him upside the head, is he does. He just needs to be literally just clipped upside the head. Hopefully I see Sean Payton do that at some point. And be like, listen here, Poindexter. But he's, when you see him in the pocket, you're seeing him actually lean back on his back foot a lot. And what you're then seeing is when he's trying to then throw through, because he's so far back on his back foot, he can't bring his wrist all the way down to keep the ball targeted where he needs it to go. And so if you look back at the Chargers game, Robert, having just watched it, I'm sure live on TV, you saw quite a number of very makeable throws by Bo Nix go high. Like passes where you're like, he should have thrown that. That should have been caught over and over and over and over again. And that's been an ongoing theme for him. And that's because when you actually look at the replay, you're seeing him kind of do one of these in the pocket, and then he's allowing that ball to sail. He's not stepping up and then into the throw properly. And when he does, actually, he throws a good ball and a very accurate one. But the problem is he's not doing it enough, and you're seeing too many of those high sailing balls. So we need to see actual improvement from Bo Nix. We need to see Bo Nix improve these. Yeah, improve
and
these
Richie, you brought up a good point in the way of I see this game being a blowout. And just with those injuries, guys brought up about the Saints, and Sean Payton being the ex-head coach, I think he's going to be aggressive, knowing that those offensive, your quarterback, your best wide receiver, they're out. And this is a game that I think that he just, again, being the ex-head coach, he's going to want to light it up, and he's going to push it. So I see an aggressive game by Sean Payton, and what you said, Bo Nix reaching out, going further, none of this dump off stuff. I think he's going to push it down the field, and I just see like a 27-12 blowout. I don't even see the Saints even getting a touchdown in this game. I think it's all field goals.
I think this is a good bounce back for the Broncos and Broncos defense. Because, I mean, it's like we saw Rattler play. There were some flashes last week, but, I mean, man, I think, even in college, he got demoted at Oklahoma and, turns the ball over. And without the weapons that they're not going to have, I don't really see him having any chance unless Bo Nix goes out there and throws 3 picks and fumbles twice.
Right.
Vele will end up being likely a wide receiver 2. He will likely be the big body guy that you're going to see replace Tim Patrick. Vele is the guy, as we all remember, was the guy that I had projected coming to my Denver Broncos in the draft. And lo and behold, we actually got him. Which was kind of wild because it's so hard to get those predictions actually right. Like it's just
especially those late round ones.
Yeah. And I managed to get that one. So he is a guy that I certainly saw as a Sean Payton guy. He's a great blocker, which is one of the main reasons why Sean Payton targeted him. And he's also got the height and speed combination, which is what he was really liking in Tim Patrick. But with Vele showing out in preseason, he's now back from getting dinged up a little bit. So he's now looking pretty good. I expect him to continue his progression back from that injury and come back on the field. That kind of brings me to one last position, and then I want your score predictions, guys, and we'll close out the show. Does anyone want to give us a bag of chips for Greg Dulcich?
You're not even playing.
You're asking for a whole lot.
I know. It's a steep price.
Is that like a fresh bag or a stale bag?
Yeah, is it going to be one that's
at this point?
Okay,
yeah.
Yes, because I have a half-open one.
Yeah, that might work.
I had to dump him in Dynasty, man.
Yeah.
He's not even getting healthy scratch now.
No.
So
yeah, he is. He's
but I do got to head out, fellas, for
See you guys.
Start the other show. So
yeah. So obviously,
good luck.
All right, Alex.
So obviously, Dulcich is a guy that is no good. Needs to, go bye-bye, in my opinion. He was also a guy that I didn't actually want really on the team this year. What I would like to see, and I have to double check the Broncos roster, is we had Yasmin, he's that international player that we have on our practice squad right now. I'd like to see what he might look like as an offensive weapon, because he's kind of just like a really big body, fast wide receiver, kind of like the crazy thing is the Broncos actually have 2 of those guys we have little Jordan Humphrey, who is basically
not so little.
He is not so little. The dude is huge. Okay. He's like the Robin Hood version of Little John. It's like, my name's Little John, but in real life, I'm not so little. He's kind of one of those dudes. Right. And then I actually see Yasmin as being a similar kind of, mold where he can play that kind of tweener wide receiver tight end role, which was really what Dulcich was meant to play for my Denver Broncos. But the dude can't catch a ball. He can't block out of you could offer him a $3 million bonus to block somebody and he would still screw it up. Right. Like he isn't that bad. And so he's just of no use for your tight end room. And he's also of no use for your tight end room because Sean Payton likes to interchange tight ends. Like look at Troutman, look at Adkins, look at who's the other guy on the Broncos? You got 3 tight ends that are kind of very much interchangeable in terms of you could put them in on any given play and they'll be acting as another tackle. And then on the very next play, they're running a seam route down the field in the same look.
Damn. Right.
And that's what you want in your tight end. You want a tight end who's there, who you're guessing what kind of play you're going to run. You don't want a tight end who's in there here it's like a Jimmy Graham guy, right? It's like the dude ain't blocking himself out of nothing. Right. Yep. No offense. Gonzalez had a little bit of that in him too with in terms of the way he played. He didn't block particularly well. And so you kind of knew when he was in, it's like, even if he is blocking, he's not going to do a great job. So let's run the heat and run the pressure on his side of the field. And I bet you we're going to do okay. And so that's where I see my Broncos. I actually have a bit of a forked score prediction here. I think that if our offense continues to fizzle the way that it has, I can see this being a much closer scoring game than I think it ought to be. I think this has the ability to go anywhere from, this is kind of A versus B, is I could see this going anywhere from like a, something like a 14-9 kind of game for my Denver Broncos. And it could go as high as something like a 35-9 or a 35-12 kind of game, because I do agree with you, Jack. I think this is going to be a tough out for the Saints to get touchdowns.
Agreed. I honestly, I don't see them scoring a touchdown in this game. With Estimate coming back, I mean, I know you haven't seen him like I've seen him. I put a lot of faith in the kid. I don't see him catching a lot of balls out of the backfield. That's not what he was, known for at Notre Dame. They had other running backs for that, but running between the tackles, the kid is stout. He used a bowling ball. I mean, it's like one little muscle,
Yeah.
And he can actually, read a block. So, but then again, I will say, on top of that, he had Joe Alt, blocking for him. And he also had Michael Mayers, a tight end on that side, blocking for him. But still, even without that, the kid's great. You're going to love him. He's going to end up taking over your number one at some point. So enjoy that.
He's got to stay healthy. He had the injury, obviously, so far this year. So
he really was never really injured at Notre Dame. So, I mean, it's not like a common thing.
Right. But that's the thing, is that we need to make sure this doesn't become a common thing. And this is one of the challenges you sometimes have with guys when they transition to the NFL, where sometimes, not all the time, sometimes their bodies just don't transition well to dealing with bigger, faster, stronger dudes when they're playing against them at the NFL level. Some guys look amazing in college and they just can't get to the physicality that is required at the NFL level. It's just a fact. Like, it is just a fact. And so we'll have to wait and see what happens with Estime. I'm going to kind of hold on and stand by my score predictions. I can see this.
Well, pick one. Instead of the range, just give us if you had to pick one score, what would that score be versus the big range? Because that can be all over the place.
I'm going to go by what we've actually then done, and we've had some pretty good offensive firepower in the latter part of every game, to the tune of 2 to 3 touchdowns, and probably at least a field goal. So if I had to go to that, I would say that is that's 21 points, 24. So I'll go 31. I'll go 31 to 12 Broncos.
Okay, then we're close. I said 27-12, so we're right there.
I go 31 to 12 Broncos, and I think the Saints likely land those as field goals rather than touchdowns, because I just don't think they have the offense against the Broncos defense, because my Broncos defense are not that injured on the defensive side of the ball, and without those offensive weapons like Olave and all those other, it's just they don't have the firepower to really stretch the field the way that they would have otherwise.
And I got to say, Richie, I really like what your defensive coordinator and what the Broncos have done with the limited amount of draft picks and salary cap, and having the depth on your defense and losing, great players. We talked about your linebacker earlier this season, who was on his way to an all-pro season, and him going out, and you guys didn't feel like you missed a beat. No. Again, it's not like any big names or anything like that. It's like guys that I really know, but everyone seems to step up, which I like, and what I appreciate with good football. I like what your defensive coordinator has done for sure.
Yeah, well, you got Jones and you got Stranad, who's actually showed out better than he ever has. Now, in fairness, this is a contract year for him, and contract years are obviously undefeated. And so, it is what it is. But nonetheless, it's to the benefit of my Denver Broncos. I think that Stranad's probably going to be a guy that we're going to let walk, or at least test the market to see what other people want to give him. And maybe he comes back, maybe he doesn't. But certainly Jones is that real surprise for me this year, because he was always an average inside backer for my team. He kind of played on the fourth string, if you will, for the inside backers. He would kind of just sub in at the end of games to kind of give guys breathers. But he was on special teams. He was an absolute staple there. But he's really stepped up, and he's effectively a starter.
I I brought him up earlier tonight. 11 tackles, 1 assist.
Yeah. So that the dude is showing out, and he deserves the credit for stepping up and improving. And that's what you want. You want to be able to draft either via UDFAs or in the later rounds of the draft, and you want to get these guys to show out. But anyways, guys, that's going to do it for the show, because we don't want to
wait. I have one last question, and this one's actually for Robert. So the Raiders just signed today is Blake Lynch, linebacker he was on your squad. What do you know about him? What do you think of him, or do you even know who he is?
Blake Lynch.
He got cut.
Ooh,
Yeah, he was a linebacker for the Chargers.
You got me stumped on that one. I honestly haven't heard really much about him through camp or anything. Our linebacking core is very young, so there wasn't a ton of room for roster, I guess, shuffling in that position, barring injury. Our three linebackers.
And that's not saying much about him. So that's
I know. Yeah, so yeah, I wish I could tell you more, but I think there's a reason why we cut him.
Right.
Well, guys, obviously my Broncos play this Thursday, so we'll be able to see how the revenge game for Sean Payton goes in terms of coming back to Narlands. And then we'll finish off on Monday with Robert's Chargers and get a full idea of how our division does in Week 7. And guys, until next week, where the West Side is the best side. Peace!
Fast lane when I pass in the street, bag of money in the passenger seat. Simcoe's been asking for me on the road from the west to the east. Way up, I might never come down, cause the coast's racking up the flight miles. So high, I might never come down, so what, this is my lifestyle. Wait a minute, work hard.